So just wanted to continue with my previous log entry about immorality, and in particular sexual immorality in the United States. How it has basically plagued our whole nation, because we don't teach our children the importance of sexual chastity. We just kind of let them figure it out as they live life. And that's one of the worst things to do, is to let your child, your son or your daughter, go blind and not teaching them one of the most important, valuable lessons in life, and that is that your virginity has great value, and you should never despise it, but you should always cherish it and value it, because if you have never been with a woman or ever been with a man, then you're a brand new product. You've never been open. You're on the store shelf, but the package has never been opened by any person. And so, in particular, this really is seen as a vital, important piece of instruction for women, because in ancient Israel, if a woman was a virgin before getting married, that was an honorable thing. However, if she had sex before marriage, that was a very dishonorable thing. She would bring shame upon her father's house. And so if the man that she had sex with wanted to marry her, then he would be given the first right of refusal. So in other words, he would actually pay her father a certain amount of money for her virginity, because that was a violation against God's law. And then if he wanted to take her to be his wife, he would also be given that chance to accept the offer or reject it. And so that's what I mean, that he would be given the first right of refusal, because he didn't have to accept her to be his wife. It would be good if he did. They brought shame, having sex before marriage, but at least, it would lead to a marriage. And that would be, not the first priority of choice amongst that community of people. But, something would be given for her virginity. Her virginity just wouldn't be given, and he wouldn't pay anything. He had to pay something. And so that was almost, in a sense, like paying off a prostitute. However, if the same woman had sex with another man, and she got caught, having sex with another man that wasn't her husband, then she was considered and deemed a prostitute. Now, that might seem shocking to people in our society, where, it's normative for, a woman to have multiple sex partners before she get married, or multiple sex partners before she even turned 21. But in ancient Israel, if she had sex with more than one person, if she got caught having sex outside of marriage a second time, she was considered a prostitute, and she was supposed to be stoned to death. I believe you can find this in, I want to say, Leviticus 22nd chapter, but I might be wrong. Either Leviticus or Exodus, one of the two. But I'm not wrong about her being stoned to death. I would have to research to find out exactly where that passage is. But yeah, if a woman was going to be having sex outside of marriage with guys she wasn't married to, she was considered a prostitute. And she would be stoned to death by the community because they didn't tolerate that kind of immoral behavior. Where if she's going to be promiscuous, then that would be the death sentence. Now, some might wonder, well, how come a woman, if she's caught having sex with more than one person, she's stoned to death? But what about the man? If he has sex with multiple people, how come he isn't given a death sentence? That's a good point. The difference is that each man was seen as a corporate head. So if a man had children, the son was always seen as heir to whatever the man owned. And the daughter would always be seen as a maid, a servant, who potentially would be put on the market to be sold, to be a wife for someone else. And the same is true today. When a man has a daughter, he know that eventually, at some point in time in her life, she might eventually be in a romantic relationship and get married. So she isn't going to carry the family name. When she gets married, she's going to be, Mrs. So-and-so, whatever her last name was. Her maiden name is no longer going to be her maiden name. Now that's just tradition in our society. But back then, it was seen as property, an exchange of property. So the woman was exchanged, in marriage as being her husband's property, once she was sold. But a man, when he got married, he wasn't exchanged. He would actually be, heir to his father's home. So, his last name wasn't going to change. So, he was actually hiring a wife to provide a service for his family business that he took over and managed instead of his father. So that's how the gender roles were. And in a sense, that's how they still are. So if a man had, let's just say, if he was promiscuous, he had sex with a woman that wasn't his wife one time, then if that woman was a virgin, then he would be given the first right of refusal. And it probably would be proper for him to actually take her to be his wife. But if she was not a virgin when he has had sex with her, then what that meant is that she had already been promiscuous, had already given herself to someone else, and as a result, she was put back on the market again. So he wasn't her first lover. So the violation would be that the first lover that she had didn't take her to be his wife, and so she was put back on the market. She's been defiled. And if he had a second woman to be his lover, and if she was a virgin, then he would have the first right of refusal. He could offer her a job opportunity as his wife, and then she could either, accept or reject it. But, at least he would give her that much. But if she wasn't a virgin, then he didn't have to offer that to her. Because, remember, all the women who had more than one sex partner were supposed to be stoned to death. It was a death sentence. So he didn't have to even offer her marriage if she had more than one sex partner. So for him, it wasn't that he was let off the hook. He would be looked at as a womanizer in the community for having sex with women that he wasn't married to. But it wouldn't be the death sentence for him necessarily, because these women that he were having sex with were not virgins. Then they were already supposed to be stoned to death before he had even had sex with them anyway. So, it would just behoove the father of the daughter to teach his daughter, look, don't have sex outside of marriage, because if you do, that man isn't obligated to take you to be his wife, and you're going to be put to shame by the whole community. And if you do it again, you're going to be stoned to death. And so that would have been the teaching, that would have helped the daughters to know, don't have sex with men that you're not married to. If he feel like he really want to be with you, then let him offer you marriage first, and then y'all can provide conjugal services to one another. So that was the prevailing thought, how the men in ancient times in ancient Israel understood marriage and sexual chastity, is that it's a job opportunity, and to provide conjugal services is something that married people do. And even in today's day and age, when people are in relationships, what they're saying is that they really want to be married. They having sex, but sex is sacred. Marriage is sacred. And they want sex, to be between them. And for most women, they just want to have sex with just that man. That's marriage. You can call her your boyfriend, or you can call her friends with benefits. But in a sense, what you're saying is you really want to be married to enjoy the benefits of having sex. And so that's how God views it, is that sex consummates marriage. Now we see an example of this when Jesus was speaking with the woman at the well. And he asked her for a cold cup of something to drink. And she refused to give it to him. And then he began to tell her about herself. And he said that you've had 5 husbands. And she said that she didn't have any husbands. And now, the interesting dichotomy about this is that Jesus knew that the woman would answer that way. And the reason why she did, because she did not exchange vows with these men that she was having sex with. It was true, they were not her husband legally. But in God's mind, remember, every time a woman has sex with a man, that consummates the marriage. And so that's why Jesus said, you have 5 husbands. In other words, you didn't exchange vows, but since you laid down and spread your legs, then that's marriage. That's what consummates the marriage. And in reality, after her first lover, if she continues to have promiscuous relations, she's supposed to be stoned to death by the Jewish community. But this woman was a Samaritan, so I'm not sure if she really followed all of the law. But if she did, she wasn't even supposed to be living. But that's why Jesus said she had 5 husbands, because God don't look at the whole girlfriend, boyfriend, fiance. God just sees our actions. If we having sex before marriage, God says, well, y'all married. That's it. He not looking at all that other stuff. He just see 2 people having sex and consenting to it because sex is sacred. And so if Jesus telling this woman that she had 5 husbands, even though she never entered into a contract with all 5 men, then I believe that God views people the same way, and particularly women. If they're having sex with guys they're not married to, then in a sense, that is their husband in God's mind every time they're having sex with a different man. And that's, in a sense, prostitution. Whether she's getting paid to provide conjugal services or not is another matter. But prostitution in God's mind is basically that. You having sex with somebody you're not married to. God is not so much concerned that you're doing it as a profession, as a sex worker. You may or may not be getting money from the guy, But if you're doing it, if you're providing conjugal services and it's outside of marriage, it's prostitution. Why? Because legally y'all not married, so y'all can break up and you be right back on the market again for the next customer to purchase and rent your body, and do all the things that men and women do in a marriage. But except in a marriage, you purchased, you've been bought, But in a relationship, you're just basically doing that. You're just being used temporarily. You don't know if the relationship is going to turn into a marriage. If not, then it was nothing more than you renting your body to this particular person. And then once the relationship is over with, you repackage yourself and go right back on the market for the next customer to rent or to buy. And so that's why God sees these marriages as strange marriages, because that's what people are doing. They're using their body in a way that is ungodly, And if they're using their bodies in a way that is ungodly, then it is sin. And this is why Paul compels his listeners to flee from fornication. He said, every sin a man sinneth is without the body, but the sin of fornication is against the body. Now, what does he mean by that? In other words, when a person is fornicating, when a woman is fornicating, having sex with men she's not married to, her value is going down. It's just like a car being driven off the lot. Everybody, if you're looking for a car to buy, you want a new car. Low mileage, no repairs. You want a brand new vehicle. But, for somebody who is prostituting themselves and they keep renting themselves to their next lover, to their next boyfriend, then what you are doing is you're basically devaluing your worth. You can't get your virginity back from the first guy that you gave it to. And if you have sex with the second guy, well, he's probably not going to want to marry you because he wasn't the first one. And so that's going to be a trickle effect from here on out. Then the next guy, he's not going to value your worth because he's not the first one. And so you're just going to be a package, an item that's going to be repackaged and rented for the next customer to use for God knows how long. And so your value goes down, and now you like a vehicle that has multiple owners and thousands of miles on it. Who's going to want to buy a vehicle that has over 100,000 miles and 7 different owners that own the title? Why buy a vehicle that has that many miles and that many owners when you can get a brand new vehicle that never been owned and don't have any miles? You see what I'm saying? And that's why Paul said every sin that you sin is outside the body. But when you fornicate, you sin it against your own body. You're bringing down your worth. When you're a virgin, your worth is immeasurable. You know what I mean? You could sell that. 500,000, million. There's a lot of rich men who will pay for a woman's virginity. But when you are promiscuous, then every time you keep having a new lover, your value goes down to where, you was worth, maybe 500,000. Now you're worth only 500. The more lovers you have, just like a vehicle, it depreciates in value. The more miles it has, the more owners, it depreciates in value. The car was worth $40,000 when you drove it off the lot, but now 10 years later, and it has 150,000 miles, and it's been owned by 5 different people. That $40,000 vehicle is now worth only $10,000 or $5,000. or however, it depreciates. So that's what Paul calls sinning against the body. So, and the same thing is true of a man too. But as I explained before, a male can prostitute himself just like a woman, and his value will go down. But it's not the exact same simply because he is a corporate head. He is to carry out his father's name. And if he's a corporate head, a man can actually have more than one wife. He doesn't have to prostitute himself. If he wants more than one lover, he can actually do that. There are provisions that God gives for a man to actually have multiple wives. So if he sets up a paradigm of polygamy, then yes, he could, he can have more than one wife if he can afford it, and not be seen as a male prostitute because he is married to all of his wives. Just as Jesus describes the story about the polygamous marriage in Matthew 25th chapter, about the 10 virgins. There were 5 wise virgins and there were 10 foolish virgins. And when the groom came, the 5 wise virgins went into the groom because they were ready to go. They had the oil in their lamps. But the 5 foolish, they were not able to go into the marriage with the groom. So this is clearly a picture of a polygamous marriage here that Jesus is describing. So for a man to be a prostitute, it is not good. And the Bible rebukes it. And the men of ancient Israel were guilty of being prostitutes all throughout the Old Testament. And this is why they were committing idolatry, is that they wanted to have sexual freedom to have sex with the women of other nations. So even though they were supposed to just worship God, they were worshiping strange gods in order to have the liberty to have sex with these women. And so in a sense, they were prostituting themselves, providing conjugal services to women that they were not married to. They were worshiping other gods. It was committing spiritual fornication and natural fornication. But I'm not going to go too deep into that. I just kind of wanted to touch upon how the same behavior that we see in ancient times is still prevalent here today. And God gives a long list of sexually immoral behaviors, I believe in Leviticus 18, 19, and chapters 21 of the sexually immoral sins that the people of the land were committing. Excuse me, I'm just sitting here in the parking lot and there's just a lot of background noise going on. But people were committing these sexually immoral acts, and I believe Leviticus 18, 19, and 21 defines what people were doing. And God warned his people, if you commit these acts, the land is going to spew you out. It's going to vomit you out. And so that's, in a sense, what we see here in America with this COVID-19 is that I believe it's a plague that God has allowed to come upon this nation because of all of its immorality, and in particular, sexual immorality. America is responsible for about 80% of the world's pornography. The pornography business is huge in America, and it grosses more money than all 3 major professional sports. Pornography grosses more money per year than professional basketball, baseball, and football combined. And 80% of it comes out of America. And when you look at America, I believe our divorce rate now is about 75%. And so what you see is this same spirit, like I was describing in the other vlog, that, young Susie is going with Justin and Tommy and Bill and all these different boys, and she ain't nothing but 5 years old. But she's learned how to manipulate them and to get what she wants, And then as she gets older, that same behavior gets a little bit more severe because now she's actually having sex with these guys, and she's, in and out. She's having sex with this guy, and then she's breaking up, and then turn around and having sex with this other guy, and then breaking up, and having sex with this other guy, and breaking up. And when she gets married, she just used to being in relationships and used to breaking up. And so we see the same thing, and that's how come people, I believe, are getting divorced here in America, because our younger generation has learned to really treat relationships very lightly. Oh, you had sex with that? Oh, no big deal. And in many instances, the women try to do like the men. You got a lot of men prostitutes, and then women said, well, if he has sex with all these different women, then I'm going to turn around and try to hurt him, and I'm going to have sex with a bunch of different men. And so you got a big mess going on here in America. It's already bad enough we got our educational institutions are co-ed, so that the boys can't really pay attention on the schoolwork because you got beautiful girls there, and the girls can't pay attention because they got the boys. And then we got co-ed working places. And I'm not saying that everything should be segregated by gender necessarily in all aspects. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that we need to be taught and educated about, this so-called law of attraction, because when you put boys and girls together in the classroom and make them learn the same thing at the same level, and then you expect them to behave the same way outside the classroom, that's unrealistic expectation. And I wonder why we have all of this, teenage pregnancy, and we got a lot of illegitimate children coming into the world, and they are affected, and they learn the same thing that their parents are doing, and they following the same footsteps, and they don't see anything wrong with it. Our country is a mess, morally. It doesn't have anything to do so much with the president. Not to say that he's completely innocent in how he's handling this pandemic, but it has more to do with America being a land of prostitutes, a land who has given into sexual immorality. We just believe it's okay to be promiscuous. You're not going to go to jail for having sex with multiple women, and the woman is not going to go to jail for having sex with multiple men. But in God's mind, both is an abomination. So much so that if the woman has sex with more than one guy, she's supposed to be stoned to death. Now, if God applied his law across the board here in America, how many women will still be living? You see what I'm saying? And that's what we have to look at. God is applying his law according to his court. Now, some man argue and say, well, that was the law that was given to Israel. I would beg to differ. No, the law was given to man. Israel was to be a light. Yes. And they received the law through Moses. And I'm not saying that people are supposed to live by the law. That's not what I'm saying. The Mosaic law was given to Israel, but the law of faith and the law of morality, that still applies. That still applies. There are 4 laws given to the Gentiles in the New Testament. 1, to not commit idolatry. 2, to not fornicate. 3, to not eat blood. And 4, to not eat strangled meats offered to idols. Those are the 4 commands given to the Gentiles. But notice the second one is to abstain from fornication. So that's still a law that is supposed to be followed. And that law was given to the Gentiles, I believe it was Acts chapter 15. the topic of discussion was, do the Gentiles have to follow the law like the Jews? And so the apostles were trying to figure out, okay, the Gentiles don't have the law like us. They don't have to follow kosher diet and, all the customs and teachings that Moses instituted. But what do they need to follow? And this is what they came up with. So that is something that still applies, is that the law of morality, as far as having sex outside of marriage, is still a law that we're supposed to abide by, whether it was written for the Jews or not. But our society believes, hey, if you're a virgin, if you're a man, and you're a virgin at 18, I feel sorry for you. What's wrong with you? We look down on people who are actually sexually chaste, especially young people. I was ashamed to be a virgin at 20, 21, 22 years old, and I should not have been ashamed of it. But that's what society was teaching me. You still a virgin? Most guys your age are not even virgins, And the same is true about the women. And so our way of thinking about sexual immorality is corrupt. We got it backwards. We should be honoring the boys and the girls and the young men and the young women that don't participate in sexual immorality and want to wait until marriage. Instead of condemning them, instead of making them feel bad, we should be honoring them and say, that's a good thing. Ain't nothing wrong with that. Wait until marriage. But our society is so corrupt. I've heard some young women say, when is a good age to have sex? When is a good age to have sex? Well, whenever you get married. That's my answer. They think you're supposed to give it up at a certain age, and they don't know what age, and there is no age. They just think, well, I don't want to be alone and not have sexual experiences, for the rest of my life. So when is a good age? That is terrible. That our young women think like that, and our young men too. And I was caught up in that way of thinking. It's terrible. I'm older now, more mature, but I realize that really isn't a good way of thinking about ourselves, our bodies. Our bodies are sacred. Sex is sacred. Marriage is sacred, and it should be treated that way. It's private. It's not something that you just go around just letting people use any old kind of way. That's not what this is, but that's what prostitution is. That's what fornication is. You basically saying, I'm allowing my body to be used by anyone that I feel can use it in that way. And that shouldn't be. And sad to say, I did participate in that at a point in time in my life because I lack wisdom. But I repented. I have not been sexually immoral or involved in any kind of promiscuous acts for over 13 years, going on 14 years now. But, it took for me to go through some bad experiences to understand the right way. I didn't have a father there to teach me, and my mother, she didn't know enough to really even help me, to give me godly counsel. So I was pretty much on my own. I sought godly counsel, but the people that I sought wisdom from, they didn't give me good counsel. You like that girl? It's okay, you have to put her away. It's like, well, I don't want to be a prostitute, but you telling me I should go ahead and accept her? I asked my Sunday school teacher that, and his answer was, well, you can't stand that she been with other lovers, that she been in another man's arms. I'm 23 years old. I'm like, man, why do I have to accept that, somebody that I consider to be a friend, or more than a friend at that point, has been, with other guys? We hadn't had sex at that time, but, it just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Like, man, I really want to be with a virgin. And he was trying to make me feel as though me looking for a virgin, was a bad thing. Like I shouldn't expect that. Like you 23, you can't expect, to find a woman that's a virgin now, You're a little too late. And that's how he made me feel. And I felt so bad, like, damn, I guess I got to just accept a woman who's been, kind of promiscuous. And so that's what I did, listening to him. And I listened to my mother, and she was like, well, you shouldn't put her away. She's been with all these different guys, you should go ahead and accept her. And I feel like that was the worst advice, that a mother could give her son. Like I said, I hadn't had sex. I was still a virgin, but they was making me feel like you have to accept that there are other people your age that are not sexually as pure as you. You just have to accept it. And if you don't accept it, then you're wrong. And I felt like I was wrong for actually being sexually chaste, for waiting. And I had a hard time trying to figure out, like, man, what am I really supposed to do? So I'm just kind of giving y'all a little bit of snippet about myself in regards to this situation as to why come I chose to be promiscuous. But initially, that was not really what I wanted. I wanted to wait until marriage to have sex with a virgin. And I still desire that even now. But to me, America, is a land of prostitution. And we are feeling the effects of the land spewing us out. Over 150,000 people have died of COVID-19, and I suspect it's going to be a lot more. And the truth is that most people are wondering, when is this going to end? And we want things to go back to normal. And so I would beg to differ and say, maybe this is the new normal. Because we don't know what else is coming down the pipe. We thinking that just because we're going through all this with COVID-19, that somehow things are going to return back to where they were before the pandemic spread. But what if something else come down the pipe that's worse than COVID-19? Then what? We think that the answer to our problem and the remedy to the problem is, oh, we'll just, look for a vaccine. And once we get a vaccine, everything will be better. And I would say that's the wrong way of seeing it. The remedy to the problem is that we need to repent. We need to stop teaching our little children and our young people that it's okay to have sex outside of marriage. And that our virginity is valuable. It shouldn't be looked down upon. And if your son or your daughter comes to you and asks you about a particular person that they're interested in, don't berate them for being sexually chaste like my Sunday school teacher did me. And don't give them bad advice like my mother gave me. Give them good advice. Say, you know what, son? You want to be with a virgin? You can have a virgin. If this woman has been with other lovers and it bothers you, you don't have to accept it. You can be a friend, but you ain't got to accept her to be your wife. We should be giving our young people that are trying to do the right thing good advice. That's what'll help them. That's what'll help this world. That's what'll help our situation. And this pandemic, which I believe is nothing more than a plague that God has allowed to come upon our country, it might go away. It might not. But I believe if we repent and get right with God and follow after his teaching in regards to fornication and sexual purity, I think, the country might actually be headed in the right direction if we do that as a people. But I think as long as we continue to turn a blind eye to it, like, we can still live in sin and still have our strange marriages and strange relationships, then I think we heading in the wrong direction. And that's what God sees America as. Strange relationships to God are basically people having sex before marriage. That's a strange thing, because sex is what consummates a marriage. And so for people to have that and then to have a strange marriage, which is basically having sex before marriage, and then you want to turn around and get married, that's backwards to God. To God's mind, we're supposed to be sexually chaste. and get married and then have sex. But our country, we are steeped in strange relationships and strange marriages. You can ask just about anybody from any culture, man or woman, boy or girl. I shouldn't say boy or girl, but sometimes it is all the way down to the youth level where people are just got live-in boyfriends, live-in girlfriends. People are just sexually active. They're not married. I mean, it's sad. And we don't think anything of it. We don't think it's a problem. But obviously it is a problem because our country has been affected by it. And we are a first world country. There are some countries that are not as advanced as America who have overcome COVID-19 already. And we still dealing with it. So that's to tell you right there, hey, excuse me, y'all, I got some more background noise, but I just wanted to get this blog in. So hope you like it.